Hey guys, this is Phil. I'm very excited to receive my NESPi 4 case from RetroPi from Amazon today. So it's available now to purchase, and it's compatible with the Raspberry Pi 4. And there's some really cool things about this case that I wanted to talk about. One of which is you can put an SD card or an SSD in your Raspberry Pi 4. So that's a cool thing. The only downside is that this is 40 bucks. I paid 40 for it, so it's more than a Raspberry Pi, but if you do get a 4 gigabyte version, it's going to be about $50, so it's still slightly less than that. I don't have an extra Raspberry Pi. I do have this. I guess an extra Raspberry Pi, but it already has a case. This is a low profile case. So I might put that in here, or what I want to do is actually get the 8 gigabyte version, 8 gigabyte RAM of the Raspberry Pi 4 and put it in here. So yeah, let's take a look at it. Let's take a look at the packaging actually. So here's the box, front, side, bottom, all the same pretty much except the back here. And there's a little instruction. It does come with a USB power supply, so that's really nice. Most cases don't come with an adapter. Okay, so instructions, we can probably do it without the instruction, but if you need it, you can use it. So, okay, here's the power supply. This is a North American release, so, and it's a USB-C plug-in to for power. Yeah, so this should have the correct voltage, and so that's a watt or whatever. That's really nice. And oh wow, the case itself much bigger than the Raspberry Pi 4. It's probably the biggest case, Raspberry Pi 4 case I've ever seen. But the reason why it's so big is because this will contain my SSD. And this is basically my SSD enclosure. Let's take a look at it. Yeah. This is, I'm not going to use this for it. I'm going to actually go and buy a new SSD, maybe 1 terabyte. You actually don't really need that much storage for a Raspberry Pi for Linux, but oh my god, look at that. It just snaps in. Wow, if I can align it right. Yeah, so that's very snugly fit. I'm not gonna do it too hard because I don't, like I said, I'm gonna use a different SSD, but it barely fits it. So I have read that if you buy an SSD, some of these might be a little too large to fit inside. So I guess find out what kind of dimensions the Raspberry Pi, the SSD you're buying is. But this is really cool. And then we'll go ahead and remove this. So it comes with all the screws that you'll need, and a screwdriver, a tiny little screwdriver to put everything together. And look at this. So this is a heat sink and fan. You don't have to buy a separate fan. That's also really nice. And the heat sink and fan. Wow, this is made out of metal. This is the fan. This plugs into the board in here. So I'm gonna put this on top of your Raspberry Pi 4. Plug this into the power into this board. All right, and then USB 3 Ethernet port. And then this must plug into for the GPIO pins. Should be fairly simple to put together. Like I said, if you have trouble, you can always use this instruction booklet for reference, but if you know your way around Raspberry Pi 4, you probably wouldn't have any trouble figuring this out. This goes on the other USB 3 and basically taking up 2 of your USB 3. But the reason why they're doing that is so that they can reroute it to the front 2 USB here, so for your controllers that you can plug in. The back will still show your display, the mini HDMI 1 and 2 and power. So let's see how this works. So if you plug this in here, so yeah, so this will align to here, this will align here. Alright, I'm going to put it together. We'll come back a little later. Hi guys, so I just removed the RetroPi 4 out of the other case, and I'm gonna put the heatsink and fan on top of it. So if you look at the instruction, you just have to orient the your NESPi 4 to it, and then you can make sure the heatsink goes that way and the wiring is south, and it plugs right into the NESPi 4 case on the board right there. Yeah, red is positive, black is negative. So and then here is your IO pin you can plug into the RetroPi or the Raspberry Pi 4. All right, and it only goes one way, so just make sure you're reading the instruction. Really simple to do. It only accesses the first 6 pins. Okay, so once you assemble the board, your Ethernet goes there, and your bottom USB 3 is taken up, and then your top USB 2 is taken, so it leaves one USB 3. Now if you look at the color instruction, you see that the first one is not used and the second one is red. And if you look at the wiring, how it's wired, it only goes this way. So you make, and you just align it correctly. So the first pin is not used. So you see it, the first pin is not used, and then the second one is red. So you can see that. I think the red is actually the power. And so the last one on there is the red black one. I think it's the ground, or at least I just know that black is normally ground or not used. All right, so that is that part of the board. Now you put in the heatsink on top of that, and once again just make sure that the wiring is south of the board, at least how I'm oriented. And then there are 4 screws that it aligns itself to, and then you just plug in the into the NESPi, and it's very difficult to do because it's very small, and it doesn't help that all these wiring is pushing it up as well. But just make sure it just goes in, and once again, make sure that on the board itself you can see a plus and a minus right there. You see the plus and the minus, so the plus is going to be the red wire, and so make sure the red is facing that towards the plus. All right, it looks like everything is in. The heatsink is actually pushed up a bit because of the stickers that they gave you. Kind of raise it up just a bit, so, and it's pushing against the thing. There are 2 black screws in here that will go on the bottom according to this instruction. Now they didn't color it black, but I know it's the black screws, even though, I mean, they have dimension in there, but the images look almost the same. But make sure the 2 black ones are the one you're going to be using to hold down the bottom 2. I mean, you're looking at it like this, so basically the 2 south screws, Anyway, once you put that in, it's gonna lock that heatsink in place. But like I said, the thermal pad that they gave kind of pushes the heatsink up just a bit, so that when you put your top on, it's gonna push it up a little bit, as well as the other wiring. It's a very tight fit in here, even though the board, the enclosure itself is rather large for a RetroPi, or for a Raspberry Pi computer. It's nice that they magnetized the screwdriver, but I don't know if that's a normal thing, but I know that it was magnetized when I used it. Alright, so that should be in place. Make sure everything is in connected and everything, and then we're just gonna put the top on. Okay, so the top of the case has another USB 3. You're gonna plug that into the open USB 3 on the Raspberry Pi 4, and that actually is connected to the SATA or SSD reader. You can't see it, but inside there's technology, and basically it's going to access your SATA through USB 3. It should be a much faster than, say, the micro SD reader. So, all right, so just make sure you get it in, and there you go. Yeah, so just make sure the wiring is in there. It's going to be kind of tough, but just push it in and then it should stay closed. On the bottom of the case is your micro USB extra. If you have extra microchips or SD cards, you can put it in. And it's tough to get out, but yeah, so it's small enough to fit in like 2 or 3. Maybe one full-size SD card, but you can store it in there. Yeah, it's very small. You can probably fit 2 or 3 different SD card under there. But there you go. And then let's take a look at the back. So you got 2 HMI out, SD, USB 1 and 2, and then this is where your SATA or your SSD. So yeah, this is where your SSD drive is going to go in, and just make sure the enclosure is tightly fitted around the your SSD. There you go. Now you snapped it in, and then it should form fit. Okay, so one thing I don't like is when you put it in, it clicks in, right, but then you can't push it down like the old Nintendo. All right, so there you go. It's a wonderful case. Let's compare it to the the Super NES Mini. It's about the same size, except that the Super NES Mini is smaller and then a little longer. Okay, so one thing I found out that when I closed it, I had to reopen it again. But make sure your power button is switch on. Apparently it's off by default according to this instruction booklet, so make sure you read before you start playing around. I had to open up and close it. But yeah, just turn it back on, and then now the power button should work, hopefully. If it doesn't, then I guess turn it back off. I don't know. I haven't actually run the script yet, but I mean, it's fairly simple. They should have just actually turned it on by default, but instead they turn it off by default. So, all right, now we can close it, and then basically you can have an awesome RetroPi NESPi 4 case with SSD card reader drive. Yeah, this is one of the best case I've ever seen, and it's such a great idea for this case. I have some complaint like it's very big, and you only have access to two USB, but whatever. Okay, so final thought on this product. It is a really good case for your Nintendo, for your Raspberry Pi 4. Uh, it it's pretty amazing. It's the only problem is it's very big, but the reason why it's so large is because you need to read your SSD drive, and it has functionality, which is that's pretty awesome. Power buttons and everything. You do need to run the scripts in order to utilize the power button and the reset button, but it should be fairly easy to do. Just go to your terminal and type that in, etc. What else? But yeah, it's kind of heavy. There's a lot of tech inside. The other problem I have is removing the SSD drive is harder than you think. There you go. But it's because there's no, you don't push it down to release it or anything like that. You do get these screws, as I mentioned earlier, that you can put it in, but it's pretty good by itself without the screws. So I don't know. You can use the screws to hold it down, but I think it is fine the way it is. I wish they do make cartridges in different colors as well, and then different stickers, maybe give you different sticker options that you can swap in and out. I would love to have one cartridge for, say, certain type of games, and then one cartridge for a different type of games, and then load them up in for RetroPi and then run it that way. But it's pretty awesome. The other problem is that the price is also $40. I think it's worth it, but some people who might think it might be too expensive, but I think it's worth it. The other problem is, like I said, the access to USB. But otherwise, this is a great case.